Right, good morning, everybody. I hope you can all hear me okay. Welcome to the BHP Fast Track webinar. My name is Holly. I'm part of the Unearth team, along with David here, and you've got Ben James from BHP on the line as well. I'll just do a super quick intro and then hand over just to run through how it's going to work today. So what we'll do is Ben will give us a good overview of the challenge, share some of the information and background and what the opportunity is in that space. During the session, you'll be able to see there's a Q&A box down the bottom. If you have any questions, please pop them in there at any time and we'll make sure those get addressed, or just pop them in the chat. As a couple of people asked, as attendees, you guys are all automatically muted. So if you want to speak at any point in time, you can just raise your hand in there and then I can put your mic on. So we can do that as well. But yeah, just feel free. Probably the easiest way is to just pop the questions in the Q&A. The session's also being recorded, so we'll be able to share that back with you guys all later. So yeah, what I might do is just flick over to David quickly to do a quick intro as well, and then we'll hand straight over to Ben.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly. Hi, everyone. This is David. My name is David Camerlenga. I'm with Unearth, based here in Brisbane. Pretty excited to have this challenge with BHP and to have Ben on the line today to kind of walk through this challenge. BHP's actually spent a little bit of time in advance of launching this competition to map the user story. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but I think you're intending to maybe walk through that a little bit today. Holly, at some point, I'm not sure when we want to go through the challenge online and maybe just show for those folks that are new to Unearth's competitions and challenges, the structure and the format and how it works and so forth. So, but let me know, Holly, if you want to do that now, if you want to do that perhaps afterwards.
Yeah, let's leave it to the end. We can go through how everyone can kind of sign up and go through that process afterwards.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. So and then maybe we'll leave it until afterwards to talk a bit about the opportunity as well. So this is a little different to our traditional competitions, where other competitions have had clear selection criteria and have had prize money associated for the winners. For this one, BHP is actually quite committed to solving this challenge, but to use this as an opportunity for some discovery. So the next phase of this competition is the shortlisted candidates from those who put forward a submission will be invited for the opportunity to participate in a forum that will be held likely here in Brisbane. And if you're not based in Brisbane, I think there'll be opportunities for you to participate remotely. You don't necessarily need to fly in, but to then engage with the broader BHP team to talk a little bit more through the specifics of your proposal and the conditions on site and that need to be considered implementing and solving it. So, so just a bit of context there. I think really pleased to have everyone on the line, and I think we might just throw over to you, Ben, perhaps to provide some context on the challenge.
Yeah, okay. Can everybody hear me all right, first of all? David and Holly, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry,
yep.
I just muted. Yes, absolutely.
All right, no worries. Okay, well, thanks everyone for taking the time to join this. I'm not going to give you any sort of a pre-scripted spiel here. I'm not going to give you any long-winded sort of PowerPoint display. I will get Holly to throw up a couple of things on the screen at some point, but it'll be fairly casual. So where we're coming from at BHP, and particularly within the coal space at the moment, I'll talk, we have a number of mine sites out in the Bowen Basin, and also another site down at New South Wales Energy Coal near the Hunter Valley. So all of the sites run a very similar site access system. We centralise the main database, if you like, and then feed off to each of the sites from there. So let me just start a little bit with what some of the challenges or how it might be seen by the workers on site, and we'll take it from there, and I'm sure there'll be some questions, and we'll just sort of ramble our way through it until everybody has a good idea of what they're looking at. So like any big organisation, we've got a massive ERP that sits in the background. We use SAP SuccessFactors as the main platform where all of the employee and contractor profiles would sit. Those profiles get into that ERP in a couple of different ways, and I'll call out that, you know, in no way, shape or form will this challenge, will part of this challenge be to change that ERP. We're just going to have to work with what we've got. That's a given, right? So the data for a coal mine worker, whether that be an employee or a contractor, that information that sits in the ERP, sits in SuccessFactors, will also feed into the SuccessFactors LMS. The profile information will also then feed across into our site access system. At the moment, that's made of a combination of a site access system and a worker. There is some challenges for them. They will go and complete some training. They will be able to believe that training is loaded into the system. They will be of an understanding they're going to rock up at site, swipe their card, the gate will open. And it is sort of twofold. One, we have some large, sometimes unwieldy back of house business processes, and that obviously poses some challenges. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. Sorry, I'm just looking at the message here. Obviously, I'm
Ben. Hey Ben, it's David here. You're cutting out a little bit, and I wonder if maybe you might. It's up to you, but if you want to maybe turn your video off, maybe that might help in terms of streaming.
Yeah, righto. That's no worries. I mean, I'm a good-looking guy, but I'm happy to can it.
Bottom left, stop video.
Yeah, I'm something at the top of that at the moment. Won't be a second.
There we go. We'll try that.
All right, let's keep going and we'll see how we go. Let me know if there's any other dramas. I'll try and jump in via a phone rather than over the PC. Okay. So, where was I? Yeah, right. So look, they'll do their training. They'll think they're going to get through the gate. They'll rock up at the site and they won't be able to get through. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's just their first time to attend site. Obviously, we have lots of training. There's lots of legislative requirements within the Queensland coal industry around people being trained, competent and authorised. And that happens on a continual basis. So training is in date, then it expires. Typically, people do retraining before it expires so that there's continuity of access. So we have challenges in the integration of the data between the different systems, and I guess even within the site access system itself, which we call TAM, so the Training and Access Management System, even within that, data flowing from the central database out to each of the Cardax controllers and the gates themselves. As I said earlier, and I may have broken up, maybe not, we run a centralised or consolidated instance of TAMS, and that then pushes information out to every site and to every gate, because as an organisation with a lot of employees and a lot of contractors, we don't always know which site the people are going to turn up at. So people that work on, say, Goonyella Riverside, one of our large open cut sites, could also go and do work at Peak Downs, Saraji, or Broadmeadow, the underground site. Right. Let me just check with Holly or David. Is the audio a bit better now?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Okay, good. Okay. So Holly, do you want to, before we put up that sort of user story or end-to-end process, do you want to throw up some of the photos?
Yeah, sure. Just sharing.
Just to put some context around what I'm talking about. So maybe jump down to the third one, that one at night where we can see people. Okay, so we've got people lined up in their vehicles trying to gain access to site. If you jump to the next one, Holly, we've got a lot of people trying to make their way through turnstiles. Jump down again, Holly, that's probably an even better one. I think that one's at, that'll be either Dornier or Cavill. That's probably Cavill Ridge by the looks of it. So it's just to put a bit of context around it. So at our shift changes, which is obviously the busiest time we have, depending on which site, you could have 700 or 800 people coming in and 700 or 800 people leaving, all within the space of about 45 minutes. A lot of those people are in cars. There's a lot that are walking, so they get bussed in, they get off the buses, they need to all move through turnstiles and boom gates. Some of them then get picked up by buses on the other side of the turnstiles and move through to their start locations where they do pre-starts. So if I just expand on that a little bit more, right? So we have then supervisors all over the place waiting for their crews to turn up. Sometimes the supervisors are caught up in this mess as well. Typically they get there a little bit early. They have a bit more of a chance to get through the gate. But this is happening at 5:30 and 6 o'clock in the morning. These workers are then going to go through their day. They do a 12-hour shift. They go back to camp that night. They'll get up at 4, have breakfast at 4:30 and go to site again. They're not in any mood to be stuck outside a gate for an hour when their supervisor doesn't know where they are. They're trying to get in to find out what work they have to do for the day. The supervisor needs them in the gate. He needs to brief them, or she needs to brief them on the safety requirements for the day, give them their job so that they can go and get some bloody work done. And obviously the management team are standing there staring at all of this going, well, we're paying these people, they're not even in the gate yet, let alone doing any work. So it's not a situation where we have a couple of people stuck outside or a couple of people that are non-compliant that we can deal with. We have 2 or 3 security guards in each of the site access centres. That's that little building you can see there, managing the comings and goings of workers. And if a worker gets stuck at a turnstile or at the boom gate, they have processes that they follow. There's intercom systems that they use. But again, we're talking about an open cut mine site. There can be multiple entrances. There's, look, to be honest, some of the turnstiles that you'll enter through, it's not a walk to the site access centre. You've got to drive to get there. So they use intercoms, then they call people in to come into the site access centre so they can triage it and work on it further. Try and understand where the issues are lying. So the interface that the site access controllers use comes into play in a big way. The ability for coal mine workers to know whether they're going to get stuck at the gate before it happens comes into it in a big way. And we do have some processes in place for them to be able to check themselves on mobile devices and at other PCs. But I guess the system or the processes that come into play here aren't as slick as they could be, aren't as streamlined as they could be, and are still, very manual. You have 4 people in a car that rock up at the boom gate. Everyone passes their card forward. The driver swipes his card, then he swipes everybody else's card. If he then also has a puck or an RFID reader on the car, then the boom gate will open. Otherwise, without that RFID reader, even if everybody is compliant at the moment, they still need to buzz the site access centre because we don't know whether the car is compliant. So I guess the legislative requirements put a lot of overhead on us, but they are what they are. They cannot be changed. They absolutely do need to be followed. They are a challenge. They're more rigid in Queensland than anywhere else in the world for a coal mine. but at the end of the day, they're designed to keep people safe, and we absolutely need to make sure that we're adhering to them. Holly, do you want to jump across to that user story that we put together? It's going to be pretty hard for me to talk through this in an end-to-end way, because it is a bit unwieldy, I guess. But I'm sure we can make this available to people. However, yeah, you're right, Dave.
So, yeah, sorry, Ben. I was just going to say, so when people register, you have to register for the competition, which is just I think a name and email and register for the site. But then in the data files at the bottom of the challenge page includes a couple of files, which one of them is this particular file. So you can download it, and then it's a pretty large size PDF. You can then zoom around and look into it.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
No worries.
So really, I guess, rather than go through every single step of this, we can see, though, obviously there's a range of situations or stages that people go through. We've done this one on relocating Simon. So we had a worker in Queensland coal mine, and he was needing to go down and work at New South Wales Energy Coal. Incidentally, this was me this week. And although I know the system and I know the processes, and I have full access to all of the training and information I need, I still had to get exemptions because I still wasn't ready to get through the gate, even after being down there all week. So I'm not going to say that this is an easy challenge to solve, because there's so many components to it, and there's a lot that is due to our internal systems and processes that we may not be able to influence. But I'm sure we can make the overall experience for the worker a much more enjoyable one. So you've got your pre-qualification stages you need to go through, whether you're a new employee or an existing employee. Incidentally, that also happens if not just moving between Queensland and New South Wales, but moving between an employee and one of the two different sorts of contractors we have. So I'm just getting a question in here. What were the areas where I was blocked? Okay, so I got blocked at the gate because, first of all, there was an additional medical that I needed to get done, so that one's on me. The medical, though, couldn't get booked in because the medical company or the doctors needed a confirmation from HR recruitment that I was all right to go and get a medical, and that BHP was going to pay for it. Even though I wasn't being recruited as such, I was still doing the job that I'm doing right now. But that's an example of where our internal process makes life difficult. And then there was an additional SOP, or standard operating procedure, one of about 10 that need to get completed. It had been changed recently. I had done the old one, not the new one, because I wasn't yet on the distribution lists for that site and hadn't swiped through the gate. I hadn't showed up on the many registers that say, hey, Ben is coming or comes to site and needs to do the new SOP. So nobody told me about it and I didn't do it. So there you go. It was a couple of things. One I could have controlled, one BHP functions could have controlled, and one perhaps the site access system should have maybe let me know about, but we didn't have that functionality. Righto. So yes, you've got your pre-qualification stuff. You've got your user set up. So they need to, new users have to log into either our internal success factors, so SAP platform, or into a contractor website if they're external to BHP, so that they can get their profile sorted in the first instance before they can do training. that information flows downstream into, in our situation, we're talking about right crowd, which is part of our site access system. As I said earlier, we also link right crowd in with Gallagher. Gallagher runs the cards and the gates, and right crowd runs the rules and the profiles, if you like. Now there's ways that I can, at the moment, know whether I can get in through the right crowd gates. Not quite listed on here as such, but we can do checks through other internal systems where we also send that data downstream to. So they're separate systems currently to the gate system. We run another system we call iPick, but that'll be changing to something called Tempo. Once you do that, you can, I guess, jump to the old mate rocks up at site, tries to swipe his card, gets his card if he doesn't have one already. So that's when they need to do that ID check on him or her, make sure that they are who they say they are. Why would someone want to be somebody else? Well, quite simply, on a coal mine site, you can only work for a certain number of hours before you meet your fatigue regulations. If you wanted to be a dodgy bugger, then you might go in and get a contractor card and be called Ben James, and get another one and be called Benjamin James. You've then got two profiles, you've got two cards. You could effectively work back to back until you fall off the perch. Not a safe situation for anybody, and something we try and avoid. So that's where the ID check comes in, to make sure they are who they say they are. You then get to the gate and you swipe at the gate, and either computer says no or computer says yes. And there's a range of reasons why they might say yes or no. You're going to be going through either turnstiles or boom gates. You might be moving in and out of different areas on the site as well. We do have some mobile access points too. So we might have somebody get onto the bus and walk down a bus, and depending on where it is, they might swipe a large sort of wand, looks like a baton. In another situation, something that's a bit newer, where putting a card reader, a Gallagher reader on the back of an iPhone and turning that into a swipe card system. I tell you those two things, but mainly because it shows that, look, there's a definite need and use case here to perhaps move away from fixed gates, fixed entry points. We need something still able to be absolutely controlled, but perhaps more flexible and mobile. Because we've got so many people coming and going, and we don't really want to spend any longer than we have to getting through the gate, because the next step after that is pre-start, and we want to get them through that and out to work. We then also have the same scenario in reverse. We want people to be able to get out of site, get home to either their families or get back to camp so they can have a rest. Just got another question here. Cell phones are not allowed in all areas of all sites. They are allowed in some areas of most sites. Depending on who you are, is whether you're allowed to take your phone to site. Sometimes we block people taking them all together, and in other cases we tell them to leave them in the crib hut, like the lunchroom. We certainly don't want drivers of our large trucks. They're 10 metres high, 15 metres long and 12 metres wide. So they're driving a small house, right? We don't want them talking on the phone at the same time. But there is, generally speaking, places on site where you can use your mobile. Superintendents and supervisors, managers and the like do have access to mobiles on site. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Ben, there's a question in the Q&A section separate to the chat that was about asking about how many man hours of labour are being lost or wasted from the current solution in an average week. Tough question to answer, but maybe you might give some indication of maybe the different areas where lost time's occurring.
Yeah. Okay. So let me think about that for just a moment.
We can come back to it if need be.
No, look, let's tackle it now while I'm there. I would suggest that when the shit hits the fan and we've got big problems. So think about the fully integrated solution we've got, and a consolidated instance, central instance. If it goes down, it tends to go down for everybody or slows down. So not every single person who rocks up at the gate gets stuck, but the messages aren't running smoothly. Some people are getting stuck, others are getting through. When that hits in Queensland, across the 10 sites, let's say we get between 40 and 150 people stuck at the gate. They might get stuck at the gate for between 15 minutes and an hour. Just rough numbers, right? Depending on which gate they are at, which site they're at, and what their problem is. And you can pretty much do a thumb suck and just say, righto, well, if you just look at it from a labour rate perspective, people probably cost us about $100 an hour, give or take, average it out, just call it 100. Now you might say, okay, cool. So we look at it from a labour perspective and the cost of labour. Well, we're paying these people and we're not getting the work out of them. We've also got the lost production, obviously. That one's a little bit more difficult, and it's probably not something I'm going to throw out over a webinar. But let me say that it would be significant, and if whatever your determination of significant is, triple it. And that can then, while it doesn't make the coal go away, the coal is still in the ground. It impacts all of the other downstream processes for production. We have trains that are booked. The train is going to turn up. We've got to fill that train with coal as it goes through. Yes, we have stockpiles and we can work to that, but it just impacts everything and slows down productivity and production, which will hit the bottom line at some point.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers that.
You got a few more questions under the Q. Do you see the Q&A section?
Yeah, I can. I'm just slow on clicking on stuff, mate. So let me have a look here. I believe that you started a new CMS and/or SES systems this week. Yeah, so there is a new contractor management system that's coming into play. We're going through a few of the teething problems with that at the moment, but they're kicking off. They were essentially started in coal. We didn't have a contractor management system, not a system as such where you would manage everyone's profiles and data. We used to do that in our old LMS. Challenge to be rolled out the Bowen Basin is the challenge for the Bowen Basin in New South Wales. And then possible further rollouts. Yeah, absolutely. If we kick goals with it, you can guarantee, because everybody else uses the same systems, we would be looking at kicking that across the other areas as well. Might have been mentioned earlier. What's the mandatory to include in the solution? The right crowd have to remain part of the solution, plus Cardax, etc. Okay, I'm going to say no. Obviously, though, there is investment that's already been put in there, but I don't want to stop people's imagination and thinking on this. So no, there's nothing to say that right crowd and Cardax absolutely have to be both there, singularly there, whatever, moving forward. Sorry to the right crowd and Cardax people that are on the call, if there is any. You can shoot me later. There's a problem with people having multiple cards. Is there a problem with people using each other's cards? I don't think that's incredibly widespread. I'm going to say that I am sure it has happened. but it is almost impossible for us to work out unless we don't have facial recognition on the cameras. We have cameras on every boom gate and turnstile, but they're typically used when somebody is talking on the intercom and the security guard can see that, yes, there's somebody there having a chat to them. It's pretty hard. With people wearing helmets and sunglasses and everything else, it's a bit difficult to know whether that person is the person that's used the card. In saying that, though, if old mate has just done a shift and gives his card to somebody else, they're not going to get in anyway. But potentially it could happen, and if there was a solution out there to help stop that, then that might be a good thing. Is the TAM system owned by BHP but is administrated by both BHP and Site Security? Okay. This contractor at both locations. So we have pretty much the same security contractor in our site access centres no matter where you go. I'm pretty sure that's the case within coal. I'm not familiar with who the site access contractors are that manage the system for us elsewhere. We then also have technology contractors that manage the back end of the system, as well as obviously the vendors that get involved as well. Hopefully that answers that. God, they're coming thick and fast. Let me have a look here. Did I answer the phone one? I think I did. Okay, SharePoint. You're using SharePoint, so rather than a new application, why don't you just build an app using Power Apps? So users can download on the phones and you can just create a barcode at each site for the users to scan. Okay, great. Perhaps that is an option. Maybe we need to work out a way to make them scan. So by all means, any and all suggestions is what I think the challenge is looking for. Please, do what research you can if you're unfamiliar with the type of workforce and the culture of the workforce. A lot of the sites are very unionised. The culture isn't the culture that you would find in, say, an office building where you turn up at a new job or a new building and they go, righto, here's your card to get in, you swipe it to get access to the elevator and you roll on up. This isn't necessarily about security access per se. This is about being trained, competent and authorised to do your job. In some sites, so at Olympic Dam, for instance, you swipe that same entry card that you use to get through the gate, you've got to use that to start a vehicle because it wants to make sure that you're licensed for that site to drive a vehicle. If we didn't have a gate that you had to swipe at to walk through, then there'd need to be some other way to make sure that anyone who passed through that area was somehow checked and we knew that they were trained, competent and authorised to walk in the gate. It's not a slap on the wrist if we have people doing work that they're not trained, competent and authorised to do. And God forbid, if somebody gets hurt that isn't trained, competent and authorised, the SSE, the site senior executive at site, it's their ass in the sling, and for all intents and purposes, they're the ones that can actually end up in jail. It's taken very seriously. Another question, roughly, how many BHP people per site are administrating the process at present? So you've got between 1 and 3 in the site access centre, depending on the site. You have at least a couple of people at the site that work in a department called Site Systems that help administer training. You also have other people that deliver training and enter training in. You have a whole HR function based in Brisbane, Kuala Lumpur and Manila that manage a lot of the back-end data in the SuccessFactors SAP or ERP, as well as technology people, both on-site, off-site and offshore. Hopefully that answers that.
Brilliant.
Whoa, no open questions. Jeez.
Well done.
Smashing it. What else? What else can I tell you?
Well, maybe while people are thinking about some more questions, we can run through just what the challenge looks like on the site and people signing up to that. And then if anyone has any more questions, just pop them in the Q&A or the chat, or if you'd like to speak directly to Ben, just and then you can, there's a function to just kind of raise your hand and we can take you off mute. Does that sound good, David and Ben?
Sounds good to me.
Oh, here's another question that has come through. Oh, how do we sign up? Okay, well, I'll just show you. So here we go, just up and I'll share my screen again. So here you can see the Unearthed homepage. So that's just unearthed.solutions/u. I'll just log out so you can see what it looks like if you already don't have an account. So when you come to the page and you're not logged in or you don't have an account, you'll see the challenge and all our live challenges here. So here's the fast track on the right hand side here. So the easiest thing to do is just create an account first up if you don't have an account already. If you do already have one, then just log in. There we go. And then once you go into the challenge, so my view will be very slightly different to what you will see. I've got admin rights on, but basically all the information that you need about the challenge is on here. Detailed description, here's an image of that user story and some photos here. Those files are all available to download as well at the bottom here. So you'll be able to do those once you have your account set up. And then really it's simply a case of filling in an application form, which we can see here. So there's a few different pieces of information to submit, and we do ask you to create an organizational profile for your company, which we'll put in at the top here. So pretty simple. You can see here some of the questions that we are asking you to describe. So describing your approach, what's the underlying technology, how ready is your technology to go, some examples of traction in the market, any support you would require for further development, and then just a bit of a presentation about how your proposal addresses the challenge. If you'd like to upload a video or any other alternative kind of media content to help explain your solution, that'd be great as well. And then there's the terms and conditions around here. The terms and conditions, I can bring them up, but they're pretty standard, basically saying, you know, all your IP rests with you, there's no IP transfer, everything kind of along those lines. So you just have to scroll through and have a read of those before you can submit your form. So pretty simple. If you've got any questions on that, let me know. And yeah, the competition does close, I think, next Friday.
Yeah, I think it's the 10th of May, that's right.
Okay, there's just another question there in Q&A. So 2 issues. If something goes wrong, then it's hard to fix. Yeah. And it's not technically hard to fix it. We have processes. There's always a way to get it fixed. What's hard is old mate at the gate doesn't know what's wrong. And when you don't know what's wrong and you don't really know who to talk to, these guys don't, you know, it's not like they all know who the HR person is or the training people are that they can go and see. Typically, there's a handful of people they talk to at site. It's the rest of their team and their supervisor. That's it. So it's hard for them to get their problems sorted out. And 2, even if everything works fine, it's costing time and money every shift. Yeah. If anything we can do to get people in and out of the gate smoother and quicker is always a good thing.
Ben, you just made the mention of the the security team at site that are checking in and don't necessarily know how to solve the problem. Does it fall on them, or does it kind of fall back to the responsibility of the employee to figure out why they're not compliant?
Absolutely falls to the coal mine worker. So if they're an employee, it's probably easier than if they're a contractor, because the employee will have more access to internal services than a contractor. The employee, not in all cases, but will probably have a BHP issued computer or other device and a login to get into stuff. The contractors don't have those systems issued. They do have logins for their training, but it can be more difficult for them. So the security guys will try and have a look in the site access system, not in the learning management system or anywhere else, because they don't have access to that. In the site access system, they'll have a look. If they can't work it out there, it's then back on the coal mine worker standing at a gate at 5 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock at night to say, sorry, mate, you can't get through the gate. You've got to work out what's going on.
Right. Okay. I think there's a question about the proposal. I think that's popped up. The question is, what length of proposal is expected? Just a few pages in order to earn the right to discuss or detail, or would you prefer something more? So, I mean, I'll kind of answer it from our perspective, and then, Ben, feel free to chime in. We've sort of seen mixed. I guess ultimately it's whatever you're comfortable putting into a presentation that you're willing to share, acknowledging that you retain the rights to the IP that you're putting in there. And acknowledging the fact that because it is a competition, it's going to be competitively assessed to determine who gets then invited to that next stage. So then I guess maybe I'll throw to you just in terms of what you might like to see in terms of technical detail, or more broadly just approach to solving the problem.
Okay. So look, it's certainly depending on who the applicants are. It's going to be difficult for some to get too technical in there without further, detailed discussions around some of our architecture. So, I'm not expecting, an incredible amount of technical detail, but we need to have an idea of, how their solution sits, how it might integrate, that sort of thing, with some of the existing systems that we have. But like you, I'm happy for the applicants to, determine what the level of detail is that they think puts their best foot forward. Mm-hmm. Two types of contractors. Yeah, sorry, I didn't get into that. Okay, so we have what we call agency contractors and service contractors. The simplest way to think about this is, and employees, obviously, right? So employees sit within our org structure. Agency contractors are coal mine workers that are employed by a contract partner, but sit within our org structure. Now, we put them within the org structure so that they can access primarily systems like SAP, due to, SAP drives all of our work management processes. If they can't access SAP, then they can't do work in there directly. So a situation would be that, we have a contractor in there and they might be a supervisor, and therefore would have a work area where work gets allocated to. That contract supervisor picks up that information, gets the rest of the contractors in that team to do the work, and they need to manage the SAP system, close out the work orders, all of that sort of stuff, the time confirmations. You then have the service contractor. Service contractor does not have access to, does not sit within our org structure, but may or may not have access into some of our other systems, depending on what we need them to do. obviously, we also have visitors. Visitors under Queensland Act and Regs cannot do any work on site, physical work, and they can't really direct people to do anything either. In fact, nobody can direct someone to do something unless they're a qualified supervisor. So we have visitors as well, and visitors must be escorted by an inducted person at all times, even within the office buildings. Hopefully that covers that. Is there a common reason? I would say the common reason would be that either training has been completed, but the site access system doesn't know it's been completed, or the site access system may believe that somebody hasn't had their minimum break between shifts, which is minimum of 10 hours. Or third, the coal mine worker is dodgy and hasn't done what they need to do and is trying to get through. Now, because of that third one, it muddies the waters for any other reason why someone gets blocked, because the first thing anybody ever says is, oh no, I've done that training, I should be able to get in, or I've had my minimum break. So it makes it difficult, and they need to go back and try and sort through logs to work out what's going on. Does the contractor management system feed the individual? I'm not sure what that one means. Lance, sorry, Holly, can you take Lance off mute for a second just so that we can clarify that question?
There we go, Lance, you should be able to speak now.
Yep, you've actually got Karen, but that's cool because it's logged in as Lance. I actually re-entered the question, so there should be a second one coming up that goes into a bit more. It was just mainly about the contractor management system. Is the contracting company responsible for the individual's training records?
Oh, okay.
Does that feed from the contractor management system into the TAMS?
Yeah, okay, sorry, I can see that, Karen. Cheers. All right, so yes, the contracting company is responsible for their worker and the training the worker has done, but the contracting company doesn't, how will I say this? They're not an administrator of the LMS. So in some cases, we have given access to them to be able to see what all of their workforce have done, especially for some of the big firms, and the individual contractor themselves can see their LMS profile, their LMS records and everything. And then that information does feed into TAMS. Yes, it is their responsibility to ensure all training of their people is up to date. And I guess due to the numbers and the complexity of the system, we would often hear a contracting company say, no, look, our people have done the training and you guys have lost it somewhere in your end. And that possibly used to be the case. Even when I first started with BMA 8 years ago, and up until 5 years ago, a little bit later even, all training was done handwritten on paper in a classroom, and then that paper would be reviewed, scanned, electronically filed, and manually data entered into the LMS. So there's a bit of a carryover on issues that we used to have and issues people think we still have. I'm not saying it's perfect now though. Sometimes data does go missing. If all workers turning up for a shift have their training and competencies up to date, does the process of passing through the gate pass smoothly? Yes. If everybody is good to go, then it's sweet as. But the second part to that is the boom gate, turnstiles, etc. a bottleneck? Absolutely, they're a bottleneck because we're forcing people to swipe. And when they can't swipe, particularly if they're at a boom gate, but also at the turnstiles, like you would have seen in those photos, traffic backs up. So the first point of call when you get stuck is to hit the intercom button and wait for old mate in the site access centre to answer, and then say, hey, I can't get through. Computer says no. He says, swipe again. She swipes the card again. He says, righto, yeah, you're no good. Come down to the site access centre. Now, if the system goes down and we've got 150, 200, 600, whatever it is, they've got to do that for every single person, because the teams will just run through like lemmings. Would you consider visiting another mining house to witness a system in operation outside of Australia? Sure, I'm always up for a junket. No, but in all seriousness, yes, this is not a throwaway problem for us. It's not something that somebody's thought up on a whim and said, all right, let's just get this out there and see what comes back. It's something we are genuinely interested in. We do have people travel the world on a weekly basis looking at different solutions from different companies that are willing to share ideas and challenges. So, yeah, I don't see that's not a drama or a blocker at all. How often do you get the large backlog of workers as shown in the pictures? Is that every day? Absolutely not every day. God, we all would have been bloody sacked a long time ago if it was every day. I would have been shot. No, it's not every day. There was absolutely a period there where it was happening every week. Now I would suggest it's probably every couple of months, maybe a little bit less. This is not the only thing that we're trying to do here, right? We have made a lot of incremental changes in system and architecture to bring stability to it, to try and ensure data flows better. At the same time, we've introduced new systems that's complicated the architecture. So, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But it's certainly not every day. No, the coal mine would have changed something themselves. Under legislation, if a worker proves compliance, can the system be overridden? The system can be overridden, absolutely. So we have a process in place where exemption can be provided. That exemption is essentially saying, yes, we agree that the worker is compliant, they can come in. The process to get an exemption typically goes something like worker contacts their supervisor, supervisor contacts the training team on site. The training team verify that the worker has everything they need to get through the gate. The training team provide that confirmation via email. That email will get forwarded to the SSE or the SSE's delegate, who has the authority to provide an exemption. And in some cases, that might be one person, or sometimes it could be everyone on the management team. And you go to whoever you can get hold of. That exemption gets provided, that information gets provided in a written email to the site access centre. The site access centre provide the exemption and somebody gets through the gate. So that typically, if you can line everybody up, you could get that done in 45 minutes. Otherwise, you got to wait. It's not unusual to say to somebody, see you tomorrow. An exemption workflow is an option. So that's essentially what we do now. We do provide exemptions. As I said, that our process at the moment is manual. And it's as such because providing exemptions essentially leaves the SSE out there liable. So they need to do their checks and balances. and the site access system isn't the source of truth for the information that the inspectorate would use to see if somebody is compliant. It's the LMS. But the site access system will be interrogated by the inspectorate if something was to happen and someone was injured on site. They will look at the LMS, they will look at the site access system, they'll look at every other source of information they can get hold of to ensure that that person was doing what they should have been doing and was trained, competent, authorised and being looked after appropriately by BHP and the contracting company that does or does not employ them.
There's and this is probably maybe a good question to wrap up on, Holly. There's one question in the chat that talks about how many applicants will progress to the next round. Like, have you got a finite number, like say the top 3 that will be invited, etc. From the conversations that we've had with BHP, they're actually quite open. So there's a day that is being already scheduled in calendars in early June, and that they're quite happy to bring in however many companies that have solutions that could contribute to the problem or to the overarching solution. So whether that is 3 or whether that's 10, I think BHP's been quite open in this instance around inviting companies that could be a fit. Ben, I don't know. And then there's another follow-up question with regards to budget and timeframes for the pilots. As I understand, Ben, I think that has been put in. It's been put in your plan for your next fiscal year. So from July 1 going forward to start to work to co-develop and perhaps trial some of these solutions that come out of this challenge. But you might be able to add a bit more colour to that conversation. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, absolutely. We've got line items in our planning to look at this from a financial perspective. I'm not going to throw a figure on what it is because any figure can be changed, whether that be up or down, and there's a number of factors that are going to come into play on that. What I would suggest is I don't want to say, look, don't constrain yourselves, because that can get a bit silly sometimes. Things need to be able to be justified, but in saying that, when you're dealing with the size of operations that we deal with and the profits or loss that can come from processes working well or not, it can sometimes it can be quite surprising what can be found and funded depending on what the solution might be. So, go in there with some great ideas, guys, and innovative solutions. And if you look at how can I say this? As a mining organisation, we are absolutely focused on getting the productivity that we have, that we've put out there in guidance. But we need to do that first and foremost in the safest way possible. And secondly, we're a business, we're trying to make money. We're going to try and do that and get tons out of the ground as cheaply as we can, providing we're super productive and super safe. So, I think, look, come up with the great ideas, and then if there's something there that needs a huge amount of money, well, then perhaps there'll be a huge amount of money found for it.
Mm. And Ben, is it fair to say that you're even open to solutions that might just be a portion of the solution, right? Like not necessarily everybody has to solve the entire process and that entire user story challenge, but if there's elements of technologies that might solve it or bring forward an element of the solution.
Absolutely, David. Absolutely. Look, to be honest with you, it's a bloody big ask to get somebody to solve that end-to-end thing, right? And, I would suggest that with all of the smart people that are on this call, if they were all in the room and all worked collectively, then we could probably get there and do it. But, so if you feel that, you know, within your organisation that you might be able to absolutely smash out of the ballpark, you know, different parts of that, but you're not placed to do other parts of it, so be it. Don't let that constrain what you're going to put in, because you know, this might be a collective solution as well. Who knows? Who knows?
Beautiful. I think we're up on time. Holly, did you have anything else? Otherwise, Ben, thank you so much for all your time going through and answering all these great questions. I think it's great to see the level of engagement and interest by everyone with all these questions. Holly, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I don't think so. That's awesome. There's one quick question in the chat which we're going to briefly touch on, but otherwise I think we'll stop taking questions then. And this will be recorded, so we'll share this on that challenge web page as well, so you'll be able to watch that again, and we'll list up the questions that were asked.
Okay, so in the Q&A, what have we got? Are we talking a cost of millions per site of this inefficiency, or tens of millions? So it's a fair question, I know. If we stop production at a site, you can easily cost tens of millions. Would the site access system cause tens of millions of loss per site, per instance of it being down? Probably not. We've got other processes, right? We can flick to business continuity plans where we have other ways of getting people through the gate, but they're not as efficient as when the system is running properly. So yeah, I mean, you could argue, yeah, it's tens of millions because, you know, if we have people locked out at the gate, you know, hundreds of people per hour, then that's easy. But realistically, we'd get them onto site and we'd get the work done, but it wouldn't be an efficient way of doing things.
Perfect.
Now, David and Holly, just mindful that while I might have rambled for a while, there's probably still other questions that are going to crop up as people start working through this. As much for me as for everybody else, what's the process if people have questions that they, you know, need to either ask of me or somebody who's smart, and I need to find somebody else within the organisation to talk to them?
Holly, are you there?
Oh yeah, sorry. So I think probably the easiest way, I'll pop my email address up on the challenge page there. For a lot of our challenges, we do have an open forum, but we don't have one actually up on this site. So there's no option to ask public open questions. So I think a couple of ways. I'll put my email up on there, and what we might actually also do is we can start the Unearth community. For those of you that are already part of it, we operate on Slack. So I will start a community Slack channel specifically for this, so everyone can ask questions on there. Ben, I'll add you to that, so if you'd like to answer questions directly, you may do that on there as well, or just rely on us to email them through.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so that's no worries. Now, just for everyone, I know we're over time. So some of you have reached out on other channels and LinkedIn and what have you. I apologise that I haven't responded to all of you. Probably rather than me end up with a whole heap of messages in LinkedIn that I'm not going to get to. I don't go and look at it that much, to be honest, guys. Let's go through Holly, and then yeah, I will do my absolute best to respond as promptly as possible to everybody. I'm traveling for the next 4 or 5 weeks, but I'll so just ignore my out of office Holly when you send stuff through, and I'll do my best to get back as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's great. And I think yeah, thanks Holly for that. I think through the Slack channel, and I think with Holly's email and between Holly and I, we could probably answer quite a few of the questions already. So we might be able to save you some time, Ben, if you guys use us as a first port of call, and then if we can't answer them, we'll get Ben involved.
Yeah, definitely. And for the guys that are on the call, the way we usually do that is kind of just depending on the total number of questions. We don't flick everything, directly through. We'll usually collate questions over a couple of days or a week, and then send them through kind of in batch, depending on the number we get. So, but we'll let you know when you can expect to hear back. If we follow that process on Slack and via email, that'd be great. I'll send through an email to everyone once we've got this video loaded up this afternoon with all those details, like links to the challenge page and to Slack and things like that. So you should get all of that information through.
Sweet. I've just noticed there was a last little bit to one of the questions in the chat that I didn't answer. So what time frame will we look at piloting the solution? Well, the easy answer is to say this next financial year. So we're not going to get anything done in the current financial year, I wouldn't expect, from a pilot perspective. But we're committed to do it. So I would think, whenever the right answer is whenever it's most appropriate for both the winner and BHP collectively. It's not going to be a one-way street. It's a two-way thing.
Awesome. Ben, thanks so much for your time. Everyone that's jumped on the call, thanks so much for jumping on. And Holly, thanks for coordinating it all. And we're super excited to see everyone's submissions come through in the next week.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Bye.